So you want to learn about Death Note, eh? Death Note is one of the greatest anime series of all time. Today we're going to be looking at how your ego just can destroy you, and this is definitely the case with Light Yagami. So my name's Joseph and I run Nori, and I help young men through self-improvement through anime. Clearly you're interested in that, so hit the subscribe and like button below. And I definitely recommend you guys check out Death Note because it's a great series. I'm going to touch on some points here, but I think it's just great for you to analyze it yourself. It's very fun and suspenseful to watch, so definitely go and check that out. So yeah, let's get started with an introduction of the plot so you guys understand what I'm talking about, and let's get to it. So Death Note follows the story of Light Yagami, who's a high school student, and he happens to pick up a mysterious notebook that's not from Earth. He later discovers that the notebook is a death note that belongs to a god of death known as a Shinigami, and his name is Rook. Light quickly discovers that the Death Note is not an ordinary book, and it grants the owner the power to kill anyone by merely writing the person's name while envisioning their face. So the series continues through Light's attempts at creating a perfect utopia world free of criminals as he kills off them using the Death Note. He aims to become the god of the new world and creates a name called Kira. His efforts are soon put to the test as L, who is a brilliant detective, one of the top detectives in the world, conducts an intense investigation in hopes of bringing Light, also known as Kira, to justice. As L and Light play the ultimate cat and mouse game, both strategies become more complicated. So temptation has been one of the many points throughout this series. I mean, he saw the Death Note and immediately, everyone's first reaction would be, okay, this is just fake, because he saw it at, it was on the playground of the school or whatever, and he was like, okay, well, this is probably just fake. But it was the temptation that he decided to just end up picking it up and taking it home, continuing a cycle of temptation throughout the series of him testing the Death Note, and it slowly snowballs to the point to where he says that he's killing people for the point of innocence, but it gets to the point to where he's killing the innocent people because those innocent people want to try to catch Kira, or they just oppose of the world that he's creating. So a lot of the series is led through temptation, and it really is a part of the thing that sets motion for Kira, and it also leads to his downfall at the same time. One thing that's very interesting is from the straight beginning, Light Yagami was introduced as the character with the Death Note. He pretty much got the Death Note within the first 10 minutes of the first episode, so we don't really get that background of what he was like before he didn't have the Death Note. All that they said was that he had a good sense of justice, and this was evident because his father was actually the chief of police. So the title of episode 1 is named Rebirth, and with Light's first use of the Death Note, Kira is born and a new mentality is formed in place of Light Yagami's. He uses the facade of wanting to change the world, but he slowly just starts to kill innocent people throughout the series. So already, Light Yagami, he doesn't really, I guess we should call him Kira at this point, he doesn't believe that he is doing evil. So Kira, it's very obvious at this point that Kira is quite narcissistic. In other words, he has an excessive interest in himself. He uses the fact that he's doing society a favor, and that he will take the responsibility of doing the evil deeds. But in reality, he never really cared about making the world a better place. He just wants to be the god of the new world. And that's the true mentality of Kira. Throughout the series, L, which is the top detective in the world, is actually in charge of the case for catching Kira and determining who Kira is. Kira and L come in close proximity. L tests Light Yagami throughout many times and deduces many things based off of what Light Yagami does as Kira. The reason why L is able to deduce such things is because Light Yagami is known to have an intelligence of 220 IQ, which is, I mean, the average person is about 100 or 110, I believe. So somewhere in that range. And so he's very intelligent. Light Yagami is very intelligent, and it's very evident throughout the series. But Light Yagami, he's also got that pride and that ego, and it doesn't do any good favors for him, because Light Yagami is able to consider the outcomes, but he's not so well at figuring out how L in specific is gonna react to that and exploit that outcome. So Light Yagami makes some very stupid decisions looking back. He's very intelligent, but he's not very wise at his decision making. In episode 2, Light Yagami gets baited into killing L. In episode 2, L, the top detective in the world, appears on TV and is broadcasting on TV that he is going to catch Kira. His full name is showcased. His face is displayed as well throughout the broadcast. He intends to send a message to Kira that he is in charge of catching the case and that he will catch. But little did Light even realize, because of his pride and ego, he got baited into killing who he believed to be L on the broadcast. This leads to L basically gaining the knowledge that he has the ability to kill people without direct contact, and that he's based in the Kanto region. So already, Light Yagami already has taken a big L. I mean, if he just think about, if he didn't even do anything in that moment, he would have avoided a lot of the problem throughout the series. There isn't much L could do. All L would have to go on is that, based off the time of the killings, that the suspect may be a student. And so this is why Light Yagami is very intelligent as a character, but he's not wise. So Light Yagami, at one point during the middle of the season, relinquishes the possession of the Death Note. And so we actually get to see a point to where Light Yagami is actually Light Yagami and not Kira. And L is able to notice a clear, distinct change in Light Yagami's behaviors, and he attributes that to a personality change, if I remember correctly. There are many times throughout those 8 episodes that we get with Light Yagami not being in possession of the Death Note, because if you're not in possession of the Death Note, you also don't have the memories of when you had the Death Note. So this is just a pure Light Yagami as he was before the series even started. And he even questions himself if he were truly Kira, because he is disgusted by the thought of him being Kira. And it's something that he thinks often about, because in many of the situations that he analyzes looking at the case, he realizes that he would have done the same thing. That's what he thinks to himself. If I were Kira, I would have done the same things that Kira has done. But he's absolutely disgusted at the fact that Kira is killing people, and also killing innocent people who are involved in the case. One thing that Kira realized before he gave up possession of the Death Note was that Light Yagami was a more emotional person. He could exploit that, his own self, his own pure self, in order to get back the Death Note. So it was all part of Kira's master plan in order to obtain the Death Note again. And I won't give too much backstory, because I want you to go and watch the anime yourself. I mean, hopefully you get that from this video. So we actually do get to see the real Light Yagami, and his very strong sense of justice actually compels him to catch Kira. Going through all that, we have ultimately the downfall of Kira, or Light Yagami. So Light Yagami ultimately loses because of his ego. Once Light Yagami wins against L, he believes that he has won in general. There's nobody that can even get close to him anymore. And for 5 years, he gets away with becoming the new L and also being Kira. So there's nothing that can really challenge him anymore. And he becomes so overconfident But he does not realize that there were students that were put in place to replace L in case L ever got killed. And so this is where we come into contact with Nier and Mello. Nier is kind of just basically a straight up copy of L, but like an inferior version. L's death actually did weaken Kira a bit because L was Light Yagami's most precious, like, fulfilling kill. I mean, he basically did win after he killed L. So he became so overconfident because Light Yagami, he would predict any movement that he would predict any plan, every single one of his plans that L would possibly consider, and he would consider those and make plans for his plans. But once Light realized that he killed L, then he was like, well, I mean, there's not really anybody that can challenge me anymore. So Light basically became complacent. I mean, throughout the 5 years, he was basically said that the crime rates reduced down to 80%, and there was world governments that were starting to obey Kira. So he actually did, in some way or form, make the world a better place, so to speak. So for 5 years, he reigned. He got a taste of what it was like to be a god. Nobody challenged him. Nobody questions him. He continued on his path to become the god of the new world. He was so sure that nobody could threaten the existence of Kira, but he was not able to consider the fact that Nier and Mello could end up working together and solving the case. And to the very end, Light believed that he was above everybody else. And he never believed that he had an ego. Ultimately, that led to his downfall. It was a spiraling snowball of temptation, greed, and those fed into his ego throughout the series. It started with the temptation of him picking up the Death Note, even though he believed it to be fake, testing it, and a new mentality being placed, which was Kira.